So today, welcome back. We have another episode of the DXB Podcast. I'm back from the Sales Innovation Expo today, and well, what a day! Very, very interesting to see how boring salespeople have become versus the energetic ways I used to be, and then I'm sure you used to love networking in your day. But we'll jump right into it today. We have Mike Dugan. He is the CEO of his own consultancy. I'll let him do the honors. But Mike, we always kick it off. Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
Yeah, Mike Dugan, United States of America. I live in Virginia. Out of college, I went in the United States Navy,
Okay.
and I was lucky enough to fly the F-14 Tomcat. I did that for about 8 years. I concluded that in Operation Desert Storm, which was the war maybe before you were born in '91, Shane, and it was a very
I'm
short war.
37. So
Yeah,
86. It was actually in 91. My dad had just been flown out to Riyadh from the
yeah,
UK.
yeah,
He helped implement the first chip, the chip and pin technology. He
yeah,
helped Riyadh move over to that technology back in 91 and 92. And then we actually lived out in Riyadh in Saudi Arabia for about a year before we came back.
yeah,
So that was quite
yeah.
interesting. So tell me more about that. The US Navy, very quickly. The US Navy being able to fly planes, being in one of the most profound wars that we know of today. Did anything come from those experiences that led you to today's where you are today?
Yeah, perhaps one thing, so as a kid, I watched all the John Wayne movies, which glorified war and all that kind of nonsense, and I never thought I'd actually be in a war. And when you wake up and go to work each day, sometimes twice a day, and there are people actively, very actively, and very focused on killing you, it kind of reshapes your perspective a little bit. And so, you know, as with everyone who goes into harm's way, I think there's a little bit of anxiety. Uh, sometimes the movies reflect reality. And there's a great movie John Wayne was in, and it was called, can't remember the name, but he's an admiral at that point. He had lost a leg, and they were about to get into a big battle. And his intel officer, who's a full commander, comes up to him, and the character's name is Rock Tory, and he comes up to Rock, and Rock's on the bridge smoking a cigarette, looks very cool, calm, and relaxed. And he says, "Rock, how do you do it?" He says, "How do I do what?" He says, "We're about to inflict a lot of damage on people. It's going to be a tremendous war, and a lot of us are going to get killed." He said, "You look calm as a cucumber." And Rock Tory takes a big drag on his cigarette and he says, "Well, here's the thick of it. All wars are fought by scared men who'd rather be someplace else." And the actor Burgess Meredith looks at Rock and he says, "Even admirals on ships about to go into harm's way," and I think the movie was called In Harm's Way, Rock Tory, John Wayne, his character, takes another puff and says, "Yes." Meaning, I'm scared shitless too, but it does no good to show that to anyone. It doesn't do me any good, and it doesn't do our troops and morale any good for me, the leader, to show that. So I was in my squadron, and I guess I had the perspective. People thought I was cool as a cucumber. I'm a senior lieutenant, about to be a lieutenant commander. And one of the guys comes up to me, and I'll keep his name, respectfully keep his name. He eventually became a commander of the air group, which is a big job.
Mhm.
And he said, my call sign was Max. He said, "Max, you know, in so many words, aren't you scared?" He said, "Jesus Christ, it's crazy. We've been doing this. How long is it going to last? It's really, it's starting to get at me." And I said to this guy, I said, "Yeah, I'm scared too. We're all scared. There's nobody here that's flying off the pointy end of a carrier going into harm's way. We had to tank all the way across Saudi Arabia to get to Iraq and then tank all the way across, come back, land on the carrier." I said, "There's nobody who's flying off this ship today or tomorrow, the next day, or last week, this week, right now, who's not scared? I said, dude, we're all scared. It's not being scared, it's how we handle it.
Mm.
Courage is not being not scared. That's not what the definition of courage is. You can't be courageous unless you are scared. Therefore, courage is overcoming your own fear, not the lack of it. If you're not scared, you're a crazy dude, and you'd probably be a big hero because you're crazy. But most people are not crazy. And if you're not crazy, you're going to be a little bit scared. So it's overcoming that fear. And the realization, which I didn't understand later, Shane,
Mm-hmm.
is that fear is only in your mind. It's not a bullet coming at you, it's in your mind. It's fiction in your mind. It's not reality. And if you want to play in non reality, in fiction, why not go to the polar opposite of the fear, something we call faith? Not faith as in religious faith, but faith that things are going to be okay. They're polar opposites. We get to choose what we think. So why don't we choose to go to the polar opposite of faith, that everything's going to be okay? God put me here for a reason. It's all going to work out. And if we play in faith, good things happen
Mm-hmm.
because of something we call the mirror effect, which essentially says we become, quotation by Walt Whitman, we as human beings become what we think about all day long.
Yep.
So guard your thoughts carefully, because that is what produces our reality, in my humble opinion. I've studied this topic extensively. The thoughts in our minds that we think every day give us our reality. Our reality is but a mere reflection of what's going on in here 24/7. So let me pause there. That was a pretty long story. I didn't think we'd get into that deep a concept early on, but there you've got it, my friend.
Well, we try to get right into it. This is where punchy information, punchy entertainment, punchy content really makes a difference, right? It's always about, look, really captivating the attention of your audience with
Yeah.
something that drives curiosity and then drives interest. So
Yep.
within that within that decade or 2 decades of overcoming fear, of understanding how to leverage fear in a positive way so you can be courageous. That then came to an end. The war finished. You had a choice. You made a choice to do X. And what was X?
Yeah, I made a choice to go into the business world and try and make some money.
Fantastic. And is
And
that
everybody
what
said,
leads you to what you do now?
yeah, yeah. And so everybody said, my God, you got a great career going here. You've only been eight and a half years. I dropped my letter as early as I could, which is about the 6.5 year point.
Mm-hmm.
Got to do a lot of interviews to get out of the Navy once you come in. And people are like, why are you getting out? Man, you can retire in 20 years. So I said, I've done this. It, it's like Groundhog Day. I know what I'm going to do for the next, 12 years before I retire. And I'm kind of over it. I'd like to do something else. So I guess I was born with a little bit of something in me that most people would like to hunker down where they believe it's safe. Most people like to work for other organizations where they believe it's safe. It's not safe. A corporation will put a cap in your ass in a heartbeat. So safety is not the answer. It's moving forward and embracing the unknown. And I felt the need to do that. So I went into sales initially with a very large corporation,
Mm-hmm.
Baxter Healthcare, and I never sold anything before in my life. And I think so. I always used to think it was hard work, but I think the reason for my success is because I just believed I'd be successful, and I was, and I won, a whole bunch of sales awards in my first year, and then recruiters found me, and I got an opportunity to go into another job. I was making $40,000 a year in that job. And they asked me coming out of the Navy, what do you want to make? And, the military doesn't pay a lot. And back then in 1991, into 91, I was making $40,000 a year. So like an idiot, I said $40,000. And so my starting salary was $40,000. And I went through training with a young lady and she was making $100,000. And my first lesson was, okay, If I had said $100,000, I'd probably be making $100,000. So
Yeah.
learned a little bit about negotiating right there. Then I got another job. So I make $40,000. I'm doing this job for about a year and a half. Recruiter gets a hold of me. She gets me on the phone, and now it's 1990, end of 92, beginning of 93, and she says, "We got a job, and I've heard good things about you. It's coming in around 270." And so I'm like, 270. I didn't say anything to her, but like, what does 270? I didn't understand what 270 meant.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't mean $270,000, making
Okay.
$40,000 a year. And I said, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? And matter of fact, I remember the recruiter's name. It was Kay Daniels. And she was in Minnesota, and I was I think it was in Texas at the time. And she said, it's coming in around 270, but she said, I really think it's a $300,000 a year job. So I gained my breath,
Mm-hmm.
and in a calm, cool, collected said, well, you know what? It couldn't hurt to take the meeting. Of course, I was going to put everything I had at this meeting and get the job, and I got the job.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what I call out of the blue, this phone call comes. That's not the way reality works. But in our mind's eye, if we believe things the way real reality, not this kind of dream called life we're living in, it doesn't work via linear programs. We have these quantum leaps that are available to us. And that was a quantum leap for me,
Mm-hmm.
and eventually got me in corporate America, able to provide for my family. And then I eventually went into consulting. We can talk about that in a moment. But I had another quantum leap when I was not the sharpest, tool in the shed going through flight school. I worked very hard and got through flight school. I wanted to fly the F-14. They assigned me a different aircraft called the S-3, which was not the cool, sexy airplane I wanted to fly. And I'm like, I'll make the most of it. And the way it works in the Navy, the number one guy in the class gets to choose whatever he wants. And, you know, number two, maybe, and everybody else, you get what we call the needs of the Navy.
Mm-hmm.
And I got the S3s because I wasn't even close to being top guy in class. I wasn't the worst, but I wasn't at the top, I'll tell you that. And a call comes through, and it appears that this one guy who was ranked number two was actually ranked number one. They gave the number one kid F-14s because he was ranked number one. But when they redid the math and he went back, this is wrong, I should be number one. They said, okay, you get F-14s as well. And they said the Navy has this thing called a quality spread. If they give the number one guy F-14s, they got to give the bottom guy F-14s.
Oh, wow.
So no community is bigger than the other. So like, okay, now we got two kids with F-14. We need to find somebody else to give F-14s to. And he said, and the guy's name was Clay Snozzy, he says, I know Dugan really wants F-14s badly. And he said, okay. And so the skipper of the training squadron calls me up on the phone. And he said, Ensign Dugan. I said, yes, sir. He says, this is Commander so-and-so from whatever the VT training squadron was. I'm calling to find out if you want to fly F-14s instead of the S-3. And so I was a little bummed out that day. And I said, I don't know what kind of fucking trick you're pulling on me. I don't know who this is, but it's not funny. And he said, Lieutenant Dugan, I'm not going to say it more than once. This is actually Commander so-and-so at the training squadron, VT, whatever. And I need to know. And I said, my apologies, sir. It's been a quite a day for me. Of course, I'd be honored to get the F-14 billet. So I got that billet. So, we think these things don't happen, but they do. And they happen up here first. As one of my mentors, Bob Proctor, used to say, if you can envision it in your mind, you can hold it in your hand. And I'm convinced that's what happened to me on these two really crazy pieces of circumstance that were not linear growth, but absolute quantum leaps. And so, if I can share with people, we do become what we think about all day long. Many people are not familiar with the thoughts they're thinking in their head all day long. And the first thing is to understand those thoughts. And I never even knew what thoughts I was thinking until I tried to get thoughts out of my head, and I tried meditation. for the first time, and all the thoughts are coming in. For the first time, I'm like, okay, I do have a lot of thoughts coming in. And so let me pause there again. It probably a little bit longer answer than you had
There
expected
is
again,
no
Shane.
time limit on this. There's no time limit. We've got the whole evening.
Yeah.
Don't carry on. I'm bought
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. So, you know, I've learned to embrace the unknown. I've learned that that's where the beauty is. I learned that there is no such thing as safety. I've learned that until we have a need for something, you may not manifest what you want. So, for example, again, going back to Bob Proctor.
Is he
Um,
really your mentor?
well, so I knew Bob. I went to his house. I went to one of his symposiums up in Toronto, and he had that class over to his house. So yeah, I've met Bob. Bob's passed away, as you know now.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but the
You know him very well.
no, not very. I knew him, but not. I would not say very well. I knew his second in command, Arash Fasogi, a little bit better. Think the world of Arash. I think he started his own opportunity now. Um, and I forgot my train of thought. I was going to tell you something Bob said, and I forgot what it was.
Bob was your mentor. One, I think, goes along the lines of what goes on in your mind. Um,
Oh yeah. So he used to say somebody came up and they were talking. They say, I want to buy this house, and well, why don't you buy the house? Well, it's $500,000 house. I don't have the money. And then Bob said, well, have you made an absolute decision that you're going to buy this house? She said, no, I'm not going to make the decision until I have the money. He said, well, you don't need the money until you've made the decision. And once you've made the decision, you'll be amazed how the money comes into your life. Or as my personal coach says today, his name's Rob Begg. He's based out of Scotland. Think the world of Rob, Robbegg. He says, go for what's in your heart. Don't go for what you think you can get. Don't say, hey, golly, we can't have 200% growth this year because it's just not realistic. Go for what's in your heart. And the last thing I'll share with you that Bob Proctor, one of the things Bob Proctor brought to my attention was that um, oh, blanking again. Blanking again. Sorry about that.
don't worry,
It'll
don't
come to
worry.
it'll come to me in a second.
We'll come back to it. We'll come back to it. But it's what you're touching on a lot in this segment is really a lot on gut feeling, a lot on being present, which is that whole thing of understanding your feelings, your emotions. And I'm actually on a massive, massive transformation that encompasses this entire conversation on what we're doing. And I recently shot an episode with John Welch, and then hopefully this helps you jog your memory. But John Welch is probably about a couple of years younger than me. And he went on the same type of journey with spiritual healing, meditation. And funnily enough, I just went through a separation with my now ex wife, and some of the focus, some of the attention, some of the things I learned. Now we're in 2023, 13, 5. So about 15 years ago, I'm 37 now, 86 born. 15 years ago, I sat in a Scientology rehab in Oklahoma. Very strange. I didn't know anything about L. Ron Hubbard until I went there, and they said you can't even talk ill of his name. And they put us through these exercises, which are called training routines. And these training routines, they're training regimens from TR1 to TR8. TR1 is based on your focus. We would have to sit in front of somebody and look in their eyes for an hour and basically not blink. No distractions, no nothing. And I thought it was the dumbest thing I've ever done in my life at that point. Okay. Then I went to TR2, TR3. That's more focused. Then it's about understanding how do people jog your memory when they influence you with peer pressure. Now, what I mean by that is I'm a straight and narrow kid. I'm a straight and narrow mind. I want to focus. I want to do the right things. Somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, I'm rich. I've got a bunch of cocaine. I've got a bunch of girls. Come and hang out with me. We're going to have so much fun." And what the training routine is actually instilling upon you without me even knowing until literally now is, if those influences come into your realm of presence and they try to sway you to think outside of your focus, you have a mechanism now that is bulletproof. Now, that mechanism transferred unknowingly, subconsciously into my incarceration time. So, I'm not sure how much you know about me, but I was born in the UK. I went to Saudi Arabia when I was younger. We lived out there with my parents. I moved to New Jersey with my mum and dad my mum, dad, brother, and sister in 1999. My dad worked at Goldman Sachs, VP of investments. We had a huge house. Everything was absolutely plush. 15 years into it, I was a good, well raised Indian kid. Ended up getting into the wrong things, like I said. Had a knee surgery, an ACL repair. And what do they prescribe you when you have an ACL repair?
Oxycontin.
Exactly. Now, what do you
You're
think
off to the races.
went to? Exactly. Oxycontin led to more codeine, more things, and then it ended up getting me onto my first rehab. Got out, relapsed, got better, got smarter at becoming an addict, functioning addict.
Yeah.
Then after that, again, it went to jail, more, then prison. And in prison, I spent
In a
3
U.S. prison?
U.S. prisons, Yardsville State Prison in downstate New Jersey. In those 3 years, the hardest thing to do in when you're locked up, or probably in the army, they're very different sides of the spectrum, is be at peace and be focused, be present. Because if you don't, if you live in the future, you're living in anxiety. If you live in the past, you're living in regret. And I look at life like a pendulum. And if I understand the transfer of energy with conversations where all somebody has to do is pick that ball up, and depending on how high they want to pick it up, you're a dick, you're arrogant, you're obnoxious, you're a prick, Shane. Boom. Now you have the power to choose how far that other ball goes, right? And if you are very, very present and you're very aware of your surroundings and how your body operates, you're able to channel that energy and keep that pendulum still. So I'm fully aligned in what you're saying about feelings, emotions, thoughts, where to be present, right? How to channel that. And it's because after prison and coming out of it, I had to reprogram my mind to integrate back into society. I started most people know the story, started in a security job, 15 hours, working in a booth, not doing anything, almost relapsed. 2 hours commute there, 2 hours commute back, taking, what do we call it in America? Is it NyQuil or night nurse? I think it's NyQuil, right?
NyQuil. Yeah.
NyQuil. So they have the equivalent here. Take NyQuil, try to go to sleep, hallucinating because you're not sleeping, waking up, then you're just right off to the races. I'll fast forward the next 8 years, but basically I went into sales, shot my way through sales, top salesman, ended up in President's Club. In 2020, when COVID hit, I decided to start my own company.
Good for you.
And the reason I started my own company because I was fearless. And this is
Yeah.
what I
There
want
you go.
to on you.
Yep.
I have been through the bottom of the ringer. I've been through the top of the top. Every single person in our town was in the financial services markets, capital markets, trading options, all multi millionaires, hundreds and hundreds of millions, right?
Yeah.
And once I stepped into the role of a CEO, I did more personal coaching, more business coaching, and I've gone through all that, which is why I set up this podcast as it is today. And that fearlessness, that focus, that resilience, that determination, motivation, and everything that came from that downside and that rock bottom helped me catapult to where I am today. In April of this year, running the business less than 27 months, we hit 1 million in revenue. We hit
Nice.
400 and something thousand pounds, which is $500,000 in our second year of a bootstrap startup. So we
Nice.
really ran through it. And now the podcast, that started in March. I really kicked it into gear in around June, July when my wife and I separated. Now this is doing 5 to 10,000 views a month.
Nice. Very nice.
So that was me rambling on for a little bit. Hopefully, you get your train of thought
Yeah. No, I
now.
like it. I like it a lot.
But
Impressive.
I'm trying to basically shine a light on the spectrum of differences from the army to what I have been through, and then how similar our thinking is today. And you may be a decade or two older than me. You look very well, but that experience that you went through for the past 2, 3, 4 decades has brought you to now. Okay.
Right.
So tell me what you are doing now in the current business, what it looks like, how are you helping people?
Have
And
you
yeah,
read
I
that?
know what Eckhart Tolle is. I've read the
Yeah.
Blinkist version, but not the full version.
Made notes. Love this book. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me about now. What are you doing now?
So I'm a consultant and a coach. I'm a business consultant. I'm also a coach.
Okay.
Um, I coach businesses primarily in sales. I'm working with an organization on the West Coast of the United States right now. They have just promoted a very young, their top sales rep to become a sales manager. If you know anything about sales leadership, those promotions from top sales rep to sales manager fail north
You know
of
what?
90% of the time. The
Yep.
skills are very different from being a sales rep to being a sales leader. We can go into that later on if you want, but they're quite
Yes.
different. So I'm coaching him to become that sales leader right now. I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoy that. It takes me back to when I was his age. I think he's maybe late 20s, early 30s. He's a senior vice president of sales right now. It's an international company. I know the private equity firm that purchased this group, and I provide him the things he needs to know. Like for example, you got to have a weekly sales meeting. Accountants don't need it, marketing people don't need it, but salespeople need a weekly sales meeting
Mm-hmm.
where we talk about the expectations and then benevolently hold them accountability. Expectations and accountability. We need that on a weekly basis.
Question on
And
that.
talk,
I'm going to jump in
go
on
ahead.
that very quickly on
Yeah.
expectations. So expectations have been the mother of all fuck ups in my life.
Okay.
Okay. And the reason, yes, I can expect my team to do X, Y, and Z. I can expect them to hit forecasts. I can expect them to hit their targets. However, the expectation always is so open ended that unless you are very clear in what that expectation is and they can mutually agree to that expectations typically fall short. So I've gone through that run of the mill. How do you put expectations forward with your sales team, knowing how volatile they are?
So you hit on a couple of the hot points. So whether you know it or not, Shane, you have all the answers already. Number one, expectations need to be benevolent. They need to be achievable. So I'm not going to sit down with Shane and say, "Hey, Shane, come at you as a new sales manager. Say, your revenue number is $5 million this year. I want you to 50% margin. So your margin number, which we're going to pay you on, is 2.5 million. You're going to say, my God, I sold 1 million last year. That's impossible. You're going to take the pack off. You're going to get irate. You're probably going to put your paper on the street, and you'll probably leave within a certain matter of time. So the first step is to say, hey, Shane, we need to set a very definitive expectation for you. Last year, you did 2.5 million in revenue or let's say you did 3 million in revenue, of which 1.5 was margin. What do you think you can do this year? And if you're a good sales rep, you're going to say, well, I can do 3.1 because you're going to sandbag. That's what sales reps do. That's their
Mm-hmm.
right to do that. And say, come on, Shane, that's ridiculous. A guy of your caliber do a little bit better. What about 3.5? Is that the most you think you can do? Maybe 3.6. Okay, 3.6. So, Shane, can we agree? And this, I didn't come up with this number, Shane. Your number is 3.6 million and 50% revenue. Can you live with that? Is there a fair expectation? And Shane says, yeah, because it's my number. Now you're bought into that number. It's not my number. It's not Dugan's number. It's Shane's number because you came up with it. So Now we got to break that down. For example, if I asked you what the national deficit is in the United States right now, you live in Europe, I think, so you would
UK, yeah,
know.
London.
Most people in America don't know. I think it's north of $36 trillion. We're having trouble paying the interest on our debt right now. That's how bad we are in America. So what does $36 trillion mean to you?
Right now, nothing.
No, it doesn't mean a damn thing to me either. But what if I said that's a bill of $128,000 for every man, woman, and children, including the children that were born yesterday in the United States? Now you've got that into perspective, don't you? Now it means something, doesn't it?
Okay.
So we have to do the same thing with our target. Okay, your target is, what do we say,
3.6.
3.6.
Yep.
So now let's break that into what that comes down to monthly, because you're not going to keep an eye on 3.6, 12 months down range.
Hmm.
3.6 divided by 12 is what?
Something in the 3 to 4 range.
3/12s are 36. So it's $1.2 million a month, right? Or $120,000, whatever it comes out
Yeah,
to.
something like that.
You think I'd be a little bit better with math? I'm in sales. And so we break that down. Let's say it comes down to, $2 million a month in sales. So that would be 2.4 million for the year. But let's just play with the numbers because they're only examples here. All right, $2 million a month in sales. There are normally 4 weeks. That means we have to do $500,000 a week. Now, seasonality can move things, but in general, for this example. So every week when we have our sales meeting, we come in and we say, Shane, how are you doing against your number of $500,000? What do we say for the week?
Hmm.
And if you're running at $550,000, hey, way to go, Shane. But if you're a little bit below that, we simply ask, what do you think the issue is?
Basic stuff. Yep.
Basic stuff. Now, here's the deal. Many sales managers say, God, I don't want to get up in the front of the room and do this. I don't want to put all the work into a sales meeting each week. We say, you don't do the sales meeting. You give them the template, they fill it out. You sit in the back of the room and they present to you. Everybody has 5 or 6 minutes. Why do we have the reps present to the sales leader, Shane? Do you think?
Accountability.
Well, but why don't we have the sales managers present to the salespeople? Hey, Shane, here you are. Julie, here you are.
Why don't they?
Why do we have the sales managers asking the questions
Well,
of the sales
he's
reps who are
supposed to,
presenting?
well, in essence, he's supposed to have all the sales manager from where I sit. He would have all the information. He's supposed to manage, coach, and help improve their well-being. If he
Yeah.
is a hands-on person, he'll lead by example. Depending on how many people are in the team, I would say the sales manager is presenting that information because he's the hierarchy point and he has to report that into leadership.
But we don't want to do it that way. We don't want the sales manager to present. We want the sales rep to present. Let's say you have 10 sales reps virtually or in the same room. They get up either virtually or in the room and present to the sales manager. Why is that important, do you think?
I have no idea.
Because the person asking the questions is in control of any conversation. Look at any
Yeah.
courtroom with the attorneys, look at any congressional hearing, look at any interview. It's the person asking the questions who's in control. And we want our sales leader to be in control. So he or she sits back and asks the questions. If the sales manager gets up and presents, and the reps say, what about this? What about this? What about this? They hijack the meeting. They emasculate the man or the woman presenting, the leader, and it goes awry very quickly. So these little tips and tricks, having been a sales leader for over 20 years, come to me very naturally, but it's very gratifying to me to share with this young man I'm mentoring, coaching into a great sales leader on the West Coast of the United States, in California, San Francisco to be exact, these skills and abilities that he doesn't have. And that you can see the light bulb go off in his head because he wants to succeed so much.
Okay, so on that, then I'll ask you that I'm going to play
Yeah,
devil's advocate for a bit.
sure.
So, an exec moving into managerial positions as a top performer, I did that and didn't do well. Okay, so I was a top
Yeah,
performer. I wanted to earn overrides. I wanted to increase my earnings.
sure,
How was I able to do that without adding too much of a workload? It was to build my own oil and gas division,
sure,
right? Now, there was a webinar demand generation team. We held 8 different market segments. Each person was responsible for their own market segment: pharma, supply chain, industrial manufacturing, RPA, oil and gas, energy, whatever the case may be. And within those domains, then you had the option of being the top performer and then hiring outside your team, and then you get 1% of each of their commissions. Now, as an exec or a person that's on the phone, client facing, you love the thrill of going into into going into sales, into closing sales. And then you go into a manager where you can't sell, right? And you are teaching others how to sell. And even worse, you are asking people who are different from you to do you, and that's impossible. You can coach
yes,
them to the best of your ability. You can
agree,
ask them
100%.
to be whatever you want them to be. But now, question: how do you determine if the exec is a fit to be a manager, or if he should stay in his domain and in his role?
Yeah, I think the first key ingredient is: are you ready, willing, able, and desirous? Do you have the right personality set to by step all the accolades that you would receive as a sales rep and give them to someone else? To step aside and everybody, the VP of the company, the CEO says, Shane, wow, you did a great job. You did a great job as sales manager. You say, well, you know what? I didn't sell a damn thing, boss. It's my 10 people here. It's Billy and John and Carol and Jane, etc. If you don't have the type of personality to step aside when you could easily take all the credit and instead give that credit to your people, you should probably not be a sales manager. Number two, there are skills and abilities a sales manager, sales leader needs to have. Can he or she develop targets? How do they develop targets? Can you build a compensation plan? What's the last compensation plan you built? What are the most important KPIs for this organization that we can measure on a weekly basis to ensure that we not only meet but exceed our revenue and margin on a daily, quarterly, monthly, annual basis? How do I recruit, hire, and train? How do I interview effectively to make sure I'm not hiring the best interviewer, but instead hiring the best person for the job? Do you know the difference between a hunter
Yep.
and a farmer? And do you need both? And to what degree do you need both? And how are you going to ask functional questions? Tell me about a time when you did this. These are, maybe 6 or 7, I can't remember any questions, of 100 questions that we need to have available to us that separate the skills and ability of an independent contributor, a sales executive, a sales rep, from a sales leader.
Okay, so let's touch
Very,
on that.
very different roles.
Very, very different. Very, very different. So let's say
Did
there
that answer your
are,
question?
yeah, 100%, 100%.
Cool.
So 2 questions I have here. In some cases, if you don't end up being a good manager, your earnings will decrease from when you were an exec. True or false?
So normally, the way I like to set up organizations is that
Quick one, true
this.
or false? First, you have to do true or false.
Well, let me make sure I understood the question. You're saying you're going to make less as a sales manager?
Yes.
I agree.
Okay.
Most sales managers will make less, and we must give. I'm a big proponent of this. Our individual contributors, the sales rep, the sales executive, the ability to make just gigantic quantities of money. Now, a sales leader, you're stepping away from that. You're going to have a more stable amount of money, and it's going to be big, and you may get other benefits travel benefits, lodging benefits, flying in the corporate jet, taking your family in the corporate jet, getting stock options if you're working for a public company, but you're not going to make the do-re-mi. You're not going to make the cash that our high performer reps are going to make. I agree with that. I think that's true, and I agree with that concept.
Now, does your stress increase or decrease stepping into management?
It depends on who you are. If you're a person that gets easily stressed about a whole bunch of problems, it could wreak havoc on your life. The young man that I'm coaching out in San Francisco is going through this right now. Matter of fact, he got sick. And I said, "We talked about this. We talked about it. You can't do everything."
Yeah.
So I'm teaching him two things: the difference between urgent and important. And we can come back to that if you want.
Mr. Eisenhower, the Eisenhower
Yep,
matrix.
yep, yep. There you go. That's it. And talking about what I call, or the Harvard Business Review published a great article in the 70s called Monkeys on Your Back. He's got all his sales reps coming in and say, "Hey, boss, I got this and I need your work on it. Or I need pricing approval here." We were talking about pricing approval on my coaching session with him. "We need this. I got this customer who's already, you got to do this." All these sales reps are trying to take the monkeys on their back and throw them on their sales manager's back. And if you accept those monkeys, you will die a miserable death. You will get terminated. You'll stress yourself out. You'll probably lose your wife and family at the same time because you just can't do all those things. So I coach people how to say, you're going to keep your monkey. I got enough monkeys on my back. And so that's called delegation. We can't delegate to everybody, but there is a way you can keep additional monkeys from coming on your back. Sounds like you want to ask a question, pardon me.
That is very true. So on questions, so I used to hate. I like helping. Marcus Kauke is one of my ex mentors, and it was the rule three before me. Okay, now three before me stands for do not come to me with a problem unless you have tried this, done this, and have a solution on what you want to try moving forward, right? Then you come to me. So the three before me. That's one thing. Pricing approval, questions, if they have a let's just call it a 1 to 5 million pound target or dollar target, and you have reps that are coming to you for pricing approvals for silly questions, would you say that that company has a hiring problem? Because if you are hiring good reps, good execs that are independent and accountable, they should be able to fish for themselves.
So it could be a hiring problem. Now, a lot of times, if your sales reps and you're in a smaller company, and probably some people watching this may be in a smaller company,
Hmm.
what I call small below $50 million, I think is
Yeah.
annual revenue, small company. Um, you know, one of your sales reps could be the CEO's daughter. One of your other sales reps could be the cousin of the chief of operations. You're not going to fire those people. People in the organization know who they are. And like, would you think about going into marketing? Like the marketing VP is going to say to you, "Mike, don't give me that person. I don't want them. I know what's going on. You're not, don't pawn them off on me." So one of the things I learned in the military, you can't fire people in the military. You need to work with them. Now, there comes a time when you need to terminate people,
Yeah.
but but we can coach people pretty easily on this issue. And this issue is, number one, no one is allowed to bring me problems. You bring me solutions. And
Yeah.
if you bring me a problem, I'm going to say, "Go get a solution. Call me back tomorrow," and I'm going to put it in my Outlook calendar or Google, whatever you use. And by 4 o'clock, I want a solution to this problem. And you know what? I don't want you to call me. I want you to write it down and send it to me. And how many people like to write things down and send things? Not many sales reps like to. So you cut the amount of crap people are throwing with you in half once you come out with this mandate right here.
Hmm.
Then we need to teach them how to solve problems. We can coach them through it. And before you know it, once we say, "Bring me solutions, not problems," put it on my desk here. We cut those in half. And then the other piece is, if you ask someone to do something, you've got to follow up. If you say, send me a detailed email with your solution by Friday at 4, then when it doesn't come in at Friday at 4, you need to send them a quick email, which means everything you ask people to do better be in your calendar, or they're suddenly going to say, Mike Dugan is full of crap. He tells you to do something, don't worry about it. He'll never follow up. I ask somebody to do something, they say, Dugan's coming back to you. It's not on his desk or in my email box by 1:00. You're in trouble. And people know that about you. So we brand ourselves there. And the second thing I wanted to say on a slightly different topic about, I think, the first question you asked is, you got to solve problems once, like pricing. So I dealt with this.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really excited about the young man I'm working with on the West Coast, and he's like, I'm going through this pricing stuff. And I said, how many pricing calls are you fielding? He said, oh, I got like 4. I said, when you're in a position of leadership, your time is so valuable. You need to solve a problem once.
Mm-hmm.
So let's create a system / a process so you solve it once. So I said, we're going to get out there. And he already put out, hey, here are the price levels. But I said, and then I said, well, can you go below that? He said, yeah, whatever's reasonable. I said, what does whatever reasonable means? And he said, whatever reasonable. I said to the young man, I said, you were a sales rep 3 months ago. What do you think happens when you say the ASP, average selling price, on this widget is $5,000, but you can go down to $4,000? Where does your average selling price suddenly go, do you think? It goes down to $4,000
Mm-hmm.
because it's easy. They don't have to sell. They just give it away. So I say, you put your price out there, and then you put the SVP, senior vice president price, and you don't make it as low as you can go. If it's $1,000, you may go down, a $50 discount maybe. And so it's $9,550 or $9,950, something
Mm-hmm.
like that. And say, that's the SVP. If you want that price, you got to come to me. And you can't do that. You got to come to me. And if you need a lower price, then we have to have a further discussion. And you can't be taking calls all day long. So one of the things we worked on yesterday, I said, get this out, get the price in the SVP floor, so the sales rep floor and the senior vice president floor, and a real easy template. If you need lower pricing, I need the business reason. And you had 6 things. How competitive is it? Boom, boom, boom. 6 data points they need to fill in to give it to them. Again, sales reps hate filling stuff out, so they're going to revert and say, here's the price, and that's the price. And when they're firm about it, the customers accept it more readily, and we have less discounting to begin with. And if they do need to discount, they know they better have all their crap in one bag when they put that email together and send it on to the SVP. And if he does approve it, it's a limited approval, not losing that much margin. And so that is one example, Shane, of why we need to solve each problem once, and we get a process for the problem, so you're not sitting answering calls all day long. So they have a process by which they can get pricing approval. They know what the pricing is, and they know what his floor is. And so those problems instantaneously disappear to the tune of 95%.
So, are you familiar with the word inoculation?
With what?
Inoculation, or to
Uh,
inoculate problems. So, the word
no, I'm
inoculation.
not. Yeah.
So, I learned this from another mentor I worked with for many years. He's really the one who inspired me to like really embrace my personality and my wit.
Yeah.
Inoculation is the ability to put something or address with a statement um, an issue before it happens. For example, cold calling with inoculation. Mike, I know you're busy. I know I've called you as an interruption. I will be brief. So, again, if you now say I'm busy, you're an idiot, number one, because I've already said that. The second and third, these are all the 3 reasons that people typically would basically give you as an objection to stop you. So you would address those, right? And that one statement of Shane, try this inoculation, this with inoculation, that then helped me bulletproof my business with problem solving tactics through inoculation. So every single time, or every time there were a problem would arise, I was able to capture it, journal it, and inoculate it. So there was always a procedure before that problem could ever arise again. And if
Yeah.
somebody, you know what, thankfully and gratefully, when we put things out, they never happen again. So that's one thing on inoculation that I'm thinking, let's just say for an example, and within that organization, if pricing was an issue, to alleviate or remove all of those conversations and streamline the business forward, would it be safe to say there are no more discounts at all in this company?
I don't think that's realistic. And there are
Okay.
certain customers who always need a discount. So
Yep.
I'm not a fan of always, always, always.
Okay.
But I am a fan of if there's a good business reason, I want to understand it. But I'm not going to give you a discount because you're a lazy salesperson. If there's a good reason, it's a penetration account. We're working with SpaceX, and we're looking at a $100 million deal. If we can capture them as a client, yeah, I'll work with you. But I need to know that ahead of time. I don't want to hear it on the phone. I want you to capture all your thoughts in a salient email so I can look and review, and then I can make a decision.
So what's
So
a
it's
good reason? What's a fair reason? If you're, let's just use the example because that's quite interesting. You have $100 million proposal on the table. You have a rep that's about to close the deal. SpaceX. Let's just use SpaceX as the example. They say we only have 60.
we have
60 more.
60 million. Say
60
it
out of
again.
100. Yeah, we only have 60 million out of the 100.
Okay.
I want a discount.
Yeah.
What
So,
is a valid reason to provide that discount?
so I can't. So to me, it sounds like the sales rep did not qualify their prospect fully.
Okay.
This is not a discounting problem. This is a qualification problem. So it has nothing to
Okay.
do with discounting. This has everything to do with qualification. Are they the right customer? And it has everything to do with value. Because if I told you I'm going to sell you a goose that lays golden eggs, you're going to say I need a lower price. I'm going to say, so you understand the goose lays golden eggs. You're going to have $1 million in a year, and you're telling me that $500,000 is too high a price to pay. We haven't effectively sold the value. And the value can be anything from the product itself, but as we all know, a lot of similar products out there. Oftentimes, the value has to be Shane, the sales rep, that I'm going to be here for you. I'm not going away. You have my cell phone. Anything that's wrong, I know the CEO personally. I play golf with him. We're going to get it done for you. You're not going to find anybody to make it happen for you like Shane.
Okay. I like
Those are the issues. So oftentimes these problems, if we have like a 5-step sales process, which we should have, these problems of discounting and hey, I can't close, Billy can't close, has nothing to do with Billy's ability to close or not. It goes way back. Did Billy qualify correctly? Did he sell the value effectively? That's what it has to do with. And everybody thinks, oh, Billy can't close. No, Billy can't qualify and Billy can't sell value. It doesn't have a damn thing to do with closing.
that is a very, very good point. That's a very, very good point. And now, before that, though, before qualification happens, a lot of customers that we worked with, they weren't able to get to that qualification period in time and consistently enough because they didn't know enough about the customer profile and type of avatar they need to be going after, mapping
Yes.
the accounts, mapping the individual, understanding their behaviors, the psychographics, the firmographics, the technographics of the individual and the company they represent. The reason why I touched on that, and it's interesting you say this because the realm of sales that you are speaking about in that arena of cost is much higher, much, much, much higher than what I've ever had to look at. Okay. And if I go before that, right, it would be stepping into a company. If I wanted to get to those type of sales, I'd step into a company, learn my way through for the next 2 to 3 years, step into the footsteps of whoever those leaders are, and then I would go down that route. And then obviously I'd experience those problems themselves. However, we want to take it a few steps back because a lot of the people that are watching this, they will like to go on that trajectory towards sales like that, towards any type of commissions that would come off of a sale like that. But again, companies need to get to a point where they can qualify enough people to get a consistent conversion ratio and percentage that they can bank on so forecast budgets make sense. How do you advise, recommend, suggest companies hone in on the right type of customer for their business before qualification happens? What do you tell them to do to start understanding their customers better?
KYC, know your customer. Go look at all the damn customers you've had, whether your company's been in business 6 months, a year, 5 years, and see all the business you closed and look at the similarities there. And then say,
What if they
come
don't
with,
have them? No,
pardon me?
let's say they don't have any customers yet.
They don't have any customers yet? Then I'd say, what is our ideal customer profile? And so, okay, tell me, how much does this widget sell for, Shane, in this example? Let's play it out here.
Let's say 25,000 a year.
$25,000 a year, maybe software, something like
Yeah.
that. So we say, okay, $25,000 a year. So that, we don't need to go for big Fortune 500 companies. What is our sweet spot? What is the low hanging fruit? Probably, and we need more research, but
Yeah.
let's say we did the research. It's those companies between 20 and $50 million a year that do XYZ. They sell the XYZ product and they have this problem. And so the key is to focus in on number one, who that ICP, ideal customer profile is, and then focus in on their problem, what I call the customer rant. That's what you need to hit on. And the customer rant is, if I'm the CEO in an elevator with my executive team, and this
Hmm.
is what the sales rep wants to come up with, he would overhear the CEO and his executive team. The next time we have boom, 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 and we can't do boom, 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 somebody's head is rolling off this team. I'm over it. And once you find out what that is and say, hey, Mr. CEO, most times you can't get a CEO on the phone, Mr. Operations Executive,
Hmm.
you know, what'd your life look like if you didn't have to deal with XYZ anymore? He said, oh my God, now we've got him.
Yeah.
So we need to target the ideal client, which means how big are they? What space do they work in? Along with who do we penetrate with? We're not going to penetrate with a CEO. You're not going to get a CEO on the line unless it's a really small company. I worked for a financial company one time, FinFit, financial
Hmm.
services firm, and the decision maker was a damn CEO or the VP of finance, C level, CFO. I'm like, wait, and he's, well, how do we contact you? Nobody's going to pick up that phone unless you have a relationship. We
Yeah.
figured out that you got to penetrate through HR because there was a employee component to this financial software. So
Hmm.
we had to penetrate through HR. So you need to find whatever your penetration point, and then you elevate and say, next we got to elevate to the VP of HR, and then we got to elevate to the COO, and then we can elevate to the CFO. And it's all about penetrate and elevate. But you got to know who you penetrate with. Then you can do something even as easy on LinkedIn and find all the companies in North America between 20 and $50 million companies that do XYZ, boom, boom, boom. A Boolean search, you get about probably 300,000 hits. And then you just scan down there. And I want to contact, if we decide to penetrate through HR, I want to VP of HR. And we begin, what I like is an algorithm, penetration algorithm, where only people who are interested respond to it. So it's working 24/7. So that's how I would do it in a nutshell. It's a little bit more complex.
That's better.
It's not, pardon me?
That's much better though. We like
Yeah,
complex.
it's like the game of golf.
Hmm.
It's simple. It's not hard. It's simple. Golf, a little white ball in a little tiny white hole in as few strokes as possible. It's simple, right, Shane?
Yep.
But the execution ain't easy. People confuse simple and
Very
easy,
true.
don't they?
Very true. Very.
So this is a simple concept. The cool thing is it's not even hard to execute. I mean, I am not a rocket scientist, but I do believe and I do know, and I have done it, that we can build any organization a repeatable system that will rain revenue on them with consistency. It is not hard. It's not rocket science, but it is a very, very repeatable science.
Okay, so now you touched on it. That's very interesting, and I love the way you're putting that together. So you've got a company. Let's play a scenario out. You've got a
Sure.
company. You've got let's just say they do 100 to 500, between 100 and 5 million annually. Now this company,
100 and 500 million?
yeah, between 100 to 5. Is that too big a range, or should we say let's
Oh,
just call
no,
it
no, no.
500
That's good. I
million?
just want to make sure it's not 5 million, it's $500 million
Yeah,
in
so
revenue.
let's just call it 500 million. Okay, so you've got a couple of teams. The North American team, they're focusing on the fintech industry. Typically, they've had a consistent influx of inbound inquiries, a consistent flow of RFPs, inbound RFPs.
Ah, good for them.
Now it dries up. It's all done. It all stops. New management is in place. They come in and say, we want to try something new. We want to attack this market. We feel this is the one, but we need to do research first. Name the most important piece of research they need to conduct through surveys or polls to get the best understanding of that customer. They're not going to be in the lift to have the customer rant. They
Well,
have no
yep,
voice on the floor.
yeah.
They have no
We
product market fit. So how do they do it? What's
First we need to
research?
define, and they should already know, what is the problem that we solve? What is the biggest problem we solve, or the top 2 or 3 problems we solve? If you narrow it down to one, great. What is that? They should know that because they had all this inbound stuff, and that's why people were calling them.
Lack of digitization.
Okay, lack of
Digitization.
that's kind of broad, but let's call lack of digitization. So that's the number one problem. Then we say what industries have the greatest amount of pain for lack of digitization. And we could conclude, okay, it's not the companies that have bought our stuff. It's not the big Fortune 500 companies because they got digitized years ago. It's these companies between 20 and $50 million that have very little system and process. And what we know about companies right at about the 40 to $60 million annualized revenue level, what stops them from moving forward is a lack of repeatable systems and process. And they're spending their time solving the same problems over and over, and they don't have that repeatable system and process. So we say that's who we're going to target. And we're going to target them maybe a couple different verticals, and we're going to test those verticals. But we at least know this big space between 20 and 50, and we're going to penetrate there. Now, additionally, they've got a little bit of a problem here because they've employed farmers answering phones and fulfilling orders,
Mm-hmm.
and suddenly they need hunters.
Yep.
And you put a farmer into a hunter's role or a hunter in a farmer's role, and as we say in the United States, that dog just won't hunt.
I love it. I love it. That's the
Yeah.
way. That's what I was looking for.
All right.
Exactly what I was looking for. And the reason why I asked that's very in a very unique, specific way is because those are the issues we would face with optimistic CEOs that would read a book off of an inbound strategy and then say, "Do this,"
Yeah.
not realizing and failing to realize what needs to happen before that. So
Yeah.
I
Now,
want to ask you,
yeah.
next part of the episode and show is about failures and successes. And the reason why I touch upon that massively is because there are a lot of men in the world that are against the grain. They are the underdog, they are the outlier, they've been pushed out of their families. These people need to see and familiarize themselves with people who have made mistakes and understand how people who make mistakes capitalize, rechannel their energy, and come out of it on the other side with a success, a win, whatever the case. More of that needs to be shown because everybody's, I did this, I'm great, I have this accolade, I went to this school. That's all great. Tell me about the deep shit. One failure that is the most profound failure that gave you the biggest lesson in your life? Tell me
Well,
about
before
that
I
time.
before I answer that, let me say that I think one of the problems in corporate America today, the large corporate public companies, the S&P 500 type companies,
Mm-hmm.
is that most of their executives have never failed. They came out of a wealthy family, grew up similar to you, went to an Ivy League school, knew a friend of a friend, maybe worked for a consultant, then got in with one of the big corporations, IBM, and now they're an executive at 27, and they go up in there at the C level by the time they're 35. And they've never made a mistake. They've never encountered failure. And when failure rears its ugly head at a C level for a 35-year-old, and it's the first time, I don't want to be in that company because that individual doesn't know what to do. He or she is probably losing their head.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone around them is losing their head. I want someone who's scarred, who has experience, who has been the underdog, who has seen the pile of manure and said, there's a pony in there somewhere, who has been battle tested and failed and know what it is to fail and understands failure's not the end of the world. In fact, the only way never to fail is never to try. That's who I want to hire, but our corporations don't believe that today. And our politicians don't come packaged like that because they don't have it either. So that's a problem. And if you have that skill set where you failed horribly and now you're coming back up, my God, Katie, bar the door. No one's getting in your way because you've seen the worst. You're not afraid of it, and you move forward and embrace the unknown because that's where the beauty of life unfolds.
Mate, you
Now,
smashed it.
what's that?
You smashed it on that one. That's a good
Yeah.
thing.
So, if you're asking about me personally,
Yes.
uh, I fell in love with a girl when I was in the military, and I quickly found out she was not the right girl for me. And so I had to go on a short little deployment to the North Atlantic for 3 months. Most cruises are 6 to 9 months. And came back and had time to think about it and said, when I get back home, I'm going to tell you, we're breaking up, just not right for me.
Mm-hmm.
And so I got home. Day later, I went over, rang her doorbell, called her up, before cell phones, and said, "Can I come over?" And she said, "Sure." And I told her that, and she said, "Well, that's great. I'm pregnant."
Wow.
So mid-20s, I'm like, well. So eventually, she begged me to marry her because both her parents were dead,
Okay.
and I did. And I've got a beautiful son who's now 25, just graduated from Virginia Tech, the light of
Congratulations.
my heart. Just greatest young man in the world. But I'm here to tell you there were 18 years where, uh, my current wife and I, so I remarried and she was instrumental in helping me raise my son, we got married. My son was, I think, 9 months old. Um, and I kept it in check, but that was a rough period of time for both he and I. And I subsequently have a beautiful marriage and a beautiful family, and beautiful kids, and I'm very lucky. But that threw me for a little bit of a loop.
So, just on that, if you're okay with it, why
Yeah,
would you consider it a failure that you married her?
I knew I shouldn't have done it. She begged me to do it, and I fell for that clickbait. Fell for the trap. She just wanted, I think, money for the next 18 years. Um, she didn't care about me. She was unfortunately afflicted with some psychological disorders, um,
Mhm.
personality disorder, narcissism, and bipolar disorder, which now we used to call manic depressive disorder, um, and not bipolar. It was where you'll put a salt shaker back and shit 20 times in the same position or something. I forget what that's
Yeah, I
called.
think I'm familiar with. Yeah, I know. I get
Yeah.
what you're saying.
So I never should have married her, and it kind of was was a weight hanging around my neck for years because she lived in the local area, which was great for my son. But then, then she was a little bit tough on him, and that took an effect upon him. And my life would have been a lot better had I never met her. But I tried to make the best of it, and I think we did. I think we made the absolute very best of it that we could.
Well, I'm really, really thankful you shared that because you are now the second person who I have met that has actually shared something very similar. And granted, I am in probably a time loop where I'm going or have gone through something similar to that just very recently. Um, it opens your eyes again to like the personality side and the reality of life, like the realness of life. And this is what I kind of get. This is how I capture the essence of something different in this podcast. So another mentor I am working with right now, he's the one who helped move me into the space I'm in now, which is ultra high net worths. We help de-risk VCs, private equity partners, any type of investor. We help them de-risk their investment with what's called a loan note. So let's say typically a company, let's say a VC wants to invest $1 billion into a new unicorn startup. Instead of investing the billion right away, which most of them would do and they go through it, they invest 500 million into the unicorn. That's your OPEX cash. You invest the other 500 million into a wealth management fund that is operated by a number of experts in the forex markets. They're market movers trading upwards of 500 million to $1 billion daily of the 3 trillion that goes through the UK. And aside from that, that 500 million then creates 30% year on year. So what happens is out of that 30, that's what, 150 million each year, that company will get 150 million in dividends from the hedge. They will have the OPEX. The investor will also own equity in the company. And then they'll get that principal 500 million back, 500 million back. So they basically loan the money for free, right? So we're basically figuring out how to hedge people's investments so that now with the VC crisis that's just happened as a result of Silicon Valley Bank, we've put in those restrictions in place, those protective measures. So if I commercially loan you the money, if I go to court and you try to fuck me over, you have to give that back. And again, it's a way to disrupt the industry. But I wanted to go back on one point. He was the person I met him for the first time, and it's sort of like what's happening now. It was only supposed to be a meet and greet, half an hour. We ended up sitting for 6 hours. He told me a bunch of stories about his life, his son who went through something very similar, and then and exactly like you, he stayed in a relationship with an abusive partner for almost 20 years. And he said it was the biggest mistake of his life. And I
Yeah.
am in a period right now where I was considering staying with my current wife because we have a baby together and I miss my
Yeah.
daughter.
Yeah.
But with that, what I had to do was come back to present, understand the future of what if, which is a future anxious state. I don't have the time with my daughter. It's irrelevant. It doesn't exist. I don't want to have regrets of not being is a past time that doesn't exist. But what does exist right now is me and you speaking on this call,
Yep.
right? So it's very enlightening to hear that that message comes from this podcast because how many other men do you think are going through a very similar situation? They've just heard that news or they're about to continue a very toxic relationship. And a lot of men don't understand. Take the fucking courage that you have and go and be independent and it
There
will
you
be
go.
okay, right? I've done that
It,
twice. So
it, it, yep.
You're
It's it
gone.
yeah. Yeah, so I like to think, and I try and tell my son, and we're all of us are unfortunately sometimes tested in this. It's not what happens to you that counts.
It's how
It's
how
how
you do
you handle it. Now,
it. Yep.
Shane, you've had some amazing things happen to you, good and bad,
Yep.
but it sounds like you've handled them well. You want to talk about courage? Sounds like you went down the addiction road.
Yep.
I know some people who went down that road. A couple of them are no longer on the planet. So,
Yep.
number one, I'm glad you're here. And I know how difficult it is for people to lose weight. I've never really had a big problem myself, but what I've heard is multiply that times 100 or 200 and try and quit a drug. Most people can't keep the donut out of their mouth on Saturday afternoon,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, you're right.
So, and the journey is a courageous one. I used to watch a show called The Wire, which was on
Yep.
HBO. And
Uh-huh.
I grew up outside of Baltimore. It took place in Baltimore. So I realized this stuff. I'll tell you a quick story later on if we have time about Baltimore when I was a kid. And I'm very familiar with these areas. And the one guy, Bubbles, the character Bubbles,
Yep.
goes in and he's so proud he's got this keychain. He's been clean for like 18 months, 2 years or something. And the big biker guy who runs the rehab at the church says, "Well, that's great, Bubs. That's really great." And he pats him on his head. He says, "Now you got the hard work in front of you." And Bubbles goes, "Whoa, what? I just did the hard work." And he says,
No,
"No."
it's
He
staying.
says, "Oh, you didn't tell me this. What's the hard work?" And he says, "Now that you're clean, you got to learn how to live life.
Yep.
That's the hard work. And when you come into a problem, it's not putting a pillar or in your mouth or something in your vein. You got to deal with it and overcome it with the knowledge that you got to embrace the unknown, and that's all out there. So my hat's off to you, Shane, for your
Thank you.
courageous journey.
Thank you. Well, I'll show you some of the flaws though in this. So, as courageous as I am, and as brave as I am, and as resilient as I am, I've gone through my journey with a strong face. I hold my head up high, and I get through it. Okay, and I've managed to be quite successful in business, but in relationships, mainly women, it's always been bad. And I've come to a point in my life where I figured, oh my god, I've focused so much attention on being so great at business and so great at being a business professional, leader, salesperson that I neglected the learning and education I needed to become a better husband, to become a better father, to become a better son, to become a better friend, to become a better business partner, to be more empathetic on those things. For those that are in that type of transition or trying to weigh up those two areas of life, business, being successful, because every man wants to have enough money to support their family.
Sure.
They understand that without that money, you cannot support your family, and then you got more headaches from
Yep.
your wife. So, how do you kind of find the happy medium so that these two both, if you focus so much on business, but your relationships are falling apart, what do you advise them? Somebody who's walked in those in those footsteps previously.
So I believe that we are human beings, not human doings.
Okay, I like
And
that.
so I go back to the fact that we become what we think about all day long, and what we're thinking about all day long appears as a mirror, which we call our everyday reality. We are creating our own reality, good, bad, and otherwise. Hard for a lot of people to digest, but I'm highly confident in this. I've studied this a great deal, and that's my stance. So if we buy into this, what I didn't like what you said is you said something like, but I'm always failing in relationships or something like that.
Yeah,
When you say that and it comes out into
the
our little piece of
universe
reality,
just picked up on
and
you.
before you say it, you're thinking it, you're reinforcing that. So we can't say, I want a relationship and be thinking I'm bad at relationships. I'm getting some feedback all of a sudden for some reason. We can't do that. And you're being the guy who's bad at relationships but good in business. And as long as that's who you are being, that's the reality you're going to see. That's the reality you're going to manifest in your own life. So we can't just give lip service to it or mind service to it and think, okay, I'm really good in relationships. We need to be that person. What does what does Shane look like? Shane, the successful businessman with the beautiful significant other woman in his life.
Yeah.
What is the final product of that? What does that look like? Does that look like 2.5 kids 10 years downrange and she's cooking dinner for you when you get home at night saying, how are you? Whatever that result is, forget all the crap in the in between. Forget the doing. It's not about the doing. Look at that final picture and become that person. And I can guarantee you at your younger age, I'm 64, so it takes me a little bit longer because I'm full of virus up here. But at your young age, you can flip things around in the sight of several weeks to a month.
That is amazing, amazing feedback. Amazing feedback. I really do appreciate that. And until you started to say it out loud to me, and I, again, the power of listening, not to listen and answer, but the power of listening and understanding, that right there, as I think, is another massive breakthrough that I will have as a result of meeting a new person.
I'll
So,
send you an invoice in the mail, so don't worry about it.
don't worry, I'm going to
Hey,
double
let me
the
say,
invoice for the appearance.
oh, so, yeah, maybe those bills will meet, collide, and blow up.
We'll write them both off. We'll give each
Tou-
other a credit note.
touche. I love it. Now, here's what I wanted to say earlier, which I
Yeah,
was talking about Bob Proctor. So we've got our mind and our heart, and our mind's pretty powerful. That's our ego, right?
yeah,
And that's the mind. And the mind has thoughts. Many people think that they are their thoughts. I have that thought, therefore, no, thoughts are just coming through. We're this perfectly spiritual DNA entity. We're beings. The mind is an excellent servant, yet it is a horrible master. And our minds can grab control of us. And it's important that we learn how to go back to who we really are, the perfect spiritual DNA being that we are, and separate that from the mind, because the mind in most people becomes the master. The mind is a horrible master, but a very excellent servant.
mm-hmm,
The mind is what creates these imaginations for us
yeah,
under our control. We need to be nice to our mind, but it can't be our master. It must be our servant. Mind is a horrible master, an excellent servant. And oftentimes, and it's a little bit more entailed, but not much, if we just close our eyes and take a couple of deep breaths, we get to be who we really are in front of the mind.
mm-hmm.
And the mind is just this other entity. We are not our mind.
I love that. I really do love that. And what you, it's unbelievable. Like I said, I just moved in here and I met this guy. He was helping somebody else move in. I was so eager to get my TVs, my bed when I moved into this place literally 2 months ago that I said, I'll pay you whatever you need just to take me to Bracknell and come back.
Yeah.
So he took me. I explained my journey. He said, I want to learn from you how to build my business. He spoke to me about spirituality, meditation, the ego, closing your eyes and breathing so you allow room for your emotions to flow through. And once you are present and you are at peace, that's the closest you'll ever be to God. And that's why, like, speaking to you on this topic, as like this is kind of the foundation of our conversation, is quite incredible. So I'm gonna cover. I want to touch on that a little bit more, but after I ask you this question, because then I
Okay.
think we'll be. This is the long. Just so you know, you've got the record. So
Ah,
we are on the longest podcast ever, and I think this will appeal to a lot of um, another realm of our community where more senior leaders can actually look up to something and resonate with something where it's level headed. So there used to be a question, what would you tell yourself when you were 18? But I don't like that question because living in the past is very different now. And everybody asked that question. So I'm going to push your thinking a little bit further. It's November 30th today. It's going to be November 30th, 2033, in 1 decade. For me right now, it's 8 p.m. For you, are you in Cali, California?
Eastern time, Eastern, 3 p.m.
All right. So it's 3 p.m., November 30th, 2033. You've either continued or you've retired or you're playing golf. But tell me what you're doing at 8 p.m. on this day, this time in 2033.
I am in the state of being, not doing, but being a happy, healthy, wealthy, handsome consultant who is well liked and well respected. If that comes off my lips a little too easily, it should. It should, because I repeat that to myself for 5 minutes when I'm on the treadmill in the morning. I do about 45 minutes on the treadmill in the morning. I have some different affirmations that I say, and that's one of them. So our subconscious mind is, very pliable, and it really dictates a lot. We have our conscious mind. If we think of a big circle, and we
Mm-hmm.
think we cut it in half, and the conscious mind being on top and the subconscious being here and the tiny human body being here,
Yep.
nothing happens till it goes into the subconscious mind. We don't take action on anything until it hits the subconscious mind. So the conscious mind says, I want to do this, that, and the other. But as soon as we offload that to the subconscious mind, that's when people get scared. Everybody wants to go skydiving, but if you've never been skydiving, I did it with the Navy SEAL, attached to a Navy SEAL many years ago. And I was up there with a couple other people, and everybody backed out except me because I'm with the Navy SEAL and I'm a fighter pilot. It's like, I can't puss out now. Once it's a nice, quiet, little, small aircraft. Once that door opens and the wind comes in, everybody's mind changes very quickly because it gets very real very quickly.
Yep.
And if you don't have it implanted in a subconscious mind, your body's going to back out.
100%.
So, affirmations can be helpful, not necessary, but helpful toward doing what you want to do.
So I'm gonna put that as, if you're okay with it, I have a section right before where do we find you, and then we wrap everything up. But there's a segment that I've introduced called execution hacks of today. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Some people say use GPT in this way. Some people say use Sales Navigator. Some people say use my software. Some people say use this coaching. I want to ask you very quickly before we get into it if you recognize this picture, the circle of influence and the circle of concern.
It looks familiar, but I'm not familiar enough to articulate the ins and outs of it.
So that's Stephen Covey, 7 Habits of
Oh,
Highly
yeah,
Effective
the
People.
7 habits.
Yep.
The 7
Right.
habits, yeah.
So the circle of influence, like you said, your values, the things you can control, the circle of concern, your emotions, feelings, everything that flows through your head. And literally 2 days ago, I'm watching this it's very basic, boring, how to be in tune with your present self even further. And it goes into visualization, it goes into affirmations, and those being the foundations of you starting your day. So just like you went to learn how to play golf, you didn't know how to use a golf club at first. You had to learn how to swing, you had to learn how to throw your hips into it, you had to learn how to let the driver hit the ball instead of you smashing the ball with all your strength, right? It's a skill, it's not power. So if you were to touch on an execution hack today to improve the audience's subconscious, to improve the way they feel about themselves, to improve the way they feel about their day, how they operate in their day, what's one thing you would say start, and I guarantee you will start to see immediate results?
Embrace a constant, perpetual state of gratitude. Do this the minute you awaken, because we are in a theta state and we've got about 4 to 5 minutes where we can drop it right into the subconscious, directly in, go through the conscious mind because we're still in that quasi sleep state. I believe it's called the theta state. That happens right when we're about to fall asleep and right when we wake up in the morning. You got about 5 minutes right before you go to sleep and about 5 minutes when you wake up in the morning. And if you will, I use a YouTube video, 12 minutes for gratitude, that I put in my ear every morning.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can wake up and begin writing everything you're grateful about. I'm grateful that I woke up today. I'm grateful that I have a beautiful wife. I'm grateful that I'm happy, healthy, wealthy. I'm grateful. I mean, the list goes on. I'm grateful I have plenty of money. I'm grateful. And what we know is that we all vibrate, everything is
Mm-hmm.
vibrating. And gratitude puts us in the highest state of vibration. And when we are in a high state of vibration, we attract good things to us. Good things are in a high state of vibration. So if you can embrace a constant perpetual state of gratitude, you will be happier, healthier, and wealthier, and you will attract what is in your heart. Forget your mind. Go for what's in your heart. And it's not going to make sense. You say, that's not realistic. Well, things that manifest don't have to be realistic. They
Yeah.
just don't. It's not the way it works. I gave you two examples when
Mm-hmm.
we open up the podcast. But your heart has to be open to it. And you got to put your mind to the side, because your mind's going to say, that's not realistic. That's not realistic. Okay, you're my servant, not my mastermind. Go away for a little bit here. I don't hate you, but you're not helping me in this situation. The ego is trying to take over. And so that constant state of gratitude will have you walking through your day happy, and keep practicing that. And you will feel yourself feeling better. And I think you will feel yourself, you you will notice that your life is getting better. The things that are in your heart are now coming to you at an increased rate.
Wow. I really like just now. I always go through these phases where a realization just clicks at the last moment, and it's exactly what you've just said right now. Embracing all of that, being kind to yourself, another thing, gratitude, and the one thing I've learned out of this episode is I'm not giving gratitude and attention to the being state of being a good dad, husband, and all that. And I think I'm going from today, I will take that away. And anybody else who understands any element of this or you don't, you need to speak to Mike, because this is a very thorough explanation of how the universe works. My
Yeah.
mum, when we lost our brother in 2010, he was 3 years younger than me, just heart failure, cardiac arrhythmic arrest. My mum had a spiritual awakening and she started to move into meditation, grounding, and she started to talk to me about higher vibrations. And at first, I thought she was crazy.
Yeah.
And only until now, this year, has it all
Yeah.
started to make
Yeah.
sense. So, Mike, we've come to the top of the second half hour, but I'm really glad about this. This is going to be an intense episode. Um, where can people find you if they want to go deeper in this? We'll have another episode, but where can
Yeah.
people go to
Yeah.
dive deeper into this?
Yeah. So you can find me on LinkedIn under uh, Michael, in parentheses, Mike Xavier Dugan, Xavier. I don't think there's another Michael Xavier Dugan on LinkedIn. My picture will look somewhat like me, except maybe a little bit prettier. Um, you can also go to www.commonwealth-consulting.com. Commonwealth, all one word. Commonwealth-consulting.com. And those are probably the easiest ways to reach me.
Okay, so what I'll do is I'll be pinging you over an email anyway. I want you to send me over all those links because we always put those up in the bottom so people can find
Sure.
them easily. And look, Mike, it was an absolute pleasure speaking with you. Until next time, guys, if you liked what you saw and heard today, like, share, subscribe this, share it with your friends, offer value, help people move forward in life. And until the next one, Mike, I will see you again.
Pleasure meeting you and talking with you, Shane. Take care, my friend.
Stay here though.